Hello and welcome to the video. Today whose title is on the student from Cambridge situation. So you have heard about a student who cheated his way into Cambridge establishment and the enormous loss of respect that has resulted. This man was able to give orders telling people that he had been illiterate most of his life, when the reality is that he is very literate, that he had done all kinds of achievements it's impossible for a person to accomplish. If anybody questioned him, they were called racist. That's because disagreeing with pathological liars is actually extraordinarily difficult if you do it openly. When someone is a pathological liar, they keep lying all the time, and the two of the most famous examples in the world include Don Quixote and Pinocchio. Don Quixote became crazy because he read so many stories about knights. And then you have Baron Munchausen, and the famous Munchausen syndrome is named after him. However, what has happened here is that clearly there is some kind of a higher power which can make people figure things out exactly at the same time everywhere. And that has to do with the precise time, the right timing, that the right second strikes the next second. That's how everyone was able to figure out at the same time, all at once, what happened. And you can rule that out if you think that does not switch your beliefs. I don't think that this source is by any means supernatural. However, let's go back to the topic. This person has been giving orders from left to right since pre-COVID times, and people had become so used to what he was doing that he had become a cult of the personality, and Cambridge had turned into a cult of the personality which revolved around him, which gave his praise to him. It was all this student in particular. No one was allowed to criticize him. And this is because for centuries people have been ruled over by hoaxers, fraudsters, scammers. If you research stories like Don Quixote and Pinocchio and Baron Munchausen, there is a reason for why they are not discussed very much, and it's because people are going to ask themselves, what happens if the person who is supposed to represent my country is actually one of these people, is actually one of those individuals, is actually a scammer? And when people begin to ask themselves questions during the 2020s era, the early 2020s, the amazing Polly, the YouTuber, asked if this was torture, this whole COVID situation. She was banned from YouTube only for asking a question, for no other reason, only because she asked this question in particular. And here is what's going on. Asking questions is a uniquely Western tradition. It's not specifically very much an Asian tradition, because the people in Asia were censored to the extent that many of them are not asking questions anymore. They just watch as things happen and then still don't ask any questions. And that's what led to the rise of Chairman Mao and his regime, which repeated the control system that had been before communism was established in China. in Cambridge, socialism became so much of a thing that it became a religion. At Cambridge, these socialists controlled everything. They controlled the papers, they controlled the libraries, they controlled pretty much the establishment. And the reason for why he was treated like this was because they were very optimistic that he was going to continue their legacy. Other than that, he was a scammer. He scammed his way into Cambridge, and he said to have done a lot more than he really did, and he kept flashing his degree all the time. When he is flashing his degree all the time, you have a situation where he becomes a personality cult. Everyone begins to look at him and talk about the man with the degree, the professor. And no matter what were his credentials, he was always the professor. The problem with professors is that they are liars. They are not telling the truth about what they are investigating, whether it's trilobites or whatever else. If they claim to be more knowledgeable than they really are, then it's becoming very hard to listen to them. And that's why it's so hard to expose frauds in these times. It's so hard to expose pathological liars, to show them for what they are, to unveil what they are doing, that it's best to do it covertly for a while and then do it overtly once you feel you're in a safe position to do so. So here you have it, this Cambridge student, some call him the Cambridge kid. He made it so that others should be fair to questioning him. And once many enough people become afraid of questioning the same person, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, Volodymyr Zelensky, Albert Bourda, Fauci, Auguste Pinochet, Anwar Congo, then he controls every mainstream narrative that's going on in the area which he creates or labels as his territory. Scammers have several main goals. One of them is to show up on TV and confront the scam in person. The other is to warn anyone about scammers trying to impersonate his scam. The third is to get the police on his side. Is to get the government on his side, and when he begins to target humanist campaign begins. Questioning him is treated as lunacy. He is treated as a completely sane and reliable person, and then he is treated as a wonder man, as the great man with the whip, like Paul Watson. And once many enough people begin to see through his scam, they stop listening. But it is not until this one moment happens when absolutely everybody figures out the truth at exactly the same time. And it could mean a lot of things. Maybe information is being passed through people's dreams, and then they're being shown what's going on, and it goes into their subconscious, and they dream about that ages later, and they all figure it out at the same time or something else. But it's unnatural how extraordinarily fast this figuring out process began. But it's good for democracy. It's a good thing that this man has been exposed, and I don't think that is the end of the world for Cambridge. Cambridge has now finally seen the light about the danger of scammers, and Cambridge is just one very sad example of how scammers are able to completely take over and influence an entire culture. And that's it for now.